On this episode of Who Dem.
He'll say, and he's like, oh, it's already changing. Our economy's becoming stronger already.
Yeah.
Just after like 3 days, which you can see it's not. You can see it's not, but that is his manipulation, and that is his play on words that he's doing to try and convince people that, oh, no, because there are people who are just going to believe what he says. Why don't you tell people who you are and why you are here.
So obviously, right, I'm not Max Katz. If you couldn't tell by the voice or the appearance, I'm filling in for Katz. He wasn't able to join us today, but I'm very excited to be here. I've been on the other side of the microphones producing the podcast. I serve as the executive producer for the show, as well as the CEO of the Ox Institute, the production company that is helping produce the show. So I'm really excited to actually get to have a conversation with you now on camera. So obviously I was talking about my podcast experience. How has podcasting been for you?
It's still relatively new. I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah.
But I think it's been fun. Actually, I think you were the second podcast, Polititine, that I was ever on. The first one I think I ever did, if I remember right, was a friend of mine who is a... you go to George Washington right now. I'm a George Washington alum.
Yeah.
I'm a big GW basketball fan. So a friend of mine was doing a podcast about GW basketball and asked me if I would be on it. And this was going back, I think, years ago. So I did that podcast with him, kind of talking about like GW basketball.
Mm.
And I think that was the first time I ever did it. And then until I did Polititine was the second one. And now... we're doing it on a weekly basis now, so it's been fun. It's been fun. I'm having a good time doing it.
And was that first show that you went on for GW basketball? Was that your first time like going into the podcast world, or had you heard about podcasts before, or seen them?
I had heard about them before, but it was really my first time going into it, right? And I think looking back on it now, it's really the experience and how much podcasts have changed, because that one was. I did it on the phone.
Yeah.
It was like voice only. It was like something people could listen to. And now the evolution of the podcast with only like a really a short time span is evolved into now like these talk shows, and we're talking video and multiple cameras and everything now.
Yeah, no.
So it has come a long way in really a short period of time.
It's super different. It's super different now. The old idea used to be like two people sitting down with a microphone. You'll watch podcasts now, and they don't even. You're like, where are the microphones? They have shotgun mics that are dropping in, and it just it looks like a full on production with like Hollywood cameras and everything. Especially now, I feel like that people in legacy media are starting to transition over into the podcast space. One thing that we were talking about, educating students and whatnot, and we run the Polititine program here at George Washington. So now, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but now every year a cohort of students gets the opportunity to produce the show. And it's really interesting because one of the reasons that we set it up is a lot of the programs offered at higher education institutions are really like focused on that legacy media side of production. So they're using the most expensive cameras, the best graphics, the best microphones. And for these podcast productions that want to hire these people out of college, they're having a really hard time transitioning them to not using necessarily the best camera, but using the best camera for a podcast, or not using the best microphone, but the best microphone for a podcast, which is different than, a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 an episode show like you'll see on CNN or on MSNBC. So it's definitely a lot different, I feel like, than legacy media, but I think it's good. I think having candid conversations is good.
Yeah, the evolution of really how, even like on the legacy media, how things are being done and shot and everything with the improvement of like the iPhone and the iPads and all the similar pieces of equipment, right? Jackie is a USC alum, University of Southern California. She was in journalism for like a long time. But I remember her talking about a class that they were teaching at USC a few years ago, and I'm sure it's probably still going on now and it's probably evolved too, right? But they were really using iPads as their tool to create a story. not only shooting it on with the iPad, but also using the software on there to type it up and to write it and to do everything on the iPad. And it's really now some of these young reporters that are coming in there and doing stories are going out there and doing it themselves. And I think it's kind of really probably helped the evolution of the podcasts and everything that's going on social media, that people now know how to do these things on their own, and they have, they can just hold all the equipment they need in their hand to go out there and do it and get these things online and get them on social media and all the streaming outlets that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember going back to Politatine when I was still doing it. Back in, I think it was 2021, we had this, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this individual, but his name is Larry Lawton. He's actually America's biggest jewel thief. He served 12 years consecutively for stealing, I think, $15 million worth of jewels, something like that. And he wrote a book. I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head. Could we actually pull it up, Max? But he wrote a book, and we had him on the show to talk about it. And he was asking us. He was like, "Are you guys an audio only podcast?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're just starting off, this, that, the other." And he was like, "You guys have iPhones, right?" He's like, "Put up your iPhone, record it, have some video, add elements to it. You don't have to have the best camera in the world to be able to do it." This is what it was. It was Gangster Redemption. It was actually a pretty cool book. I would be interested. Larry's a little bit of a crazy individual now. He got out of prison, and he did a bunch of rehab programs for students, and for young people. And he would also go to like jewelry stores and tell them how he would rob them and prepare them for setting up security systems to prevent it. But now he's just crazy. He's become a social media influencer, but he's a fun guy. He's a great guy.
So has Politatine evolved? I think when I was on the show, it was voice only.
Yeah.
Now are they using cameras, or is it still voice only?
Yeah, Politatine, when you were on it, we had a one camera setup.
Okay.
And that's how we were easing these students into it, because this is our first semester running it as a cohort. And so we were, not trying to overwhelm the students with having a 3-camera setup, but also we were trying to make sure that we were actually effectively teaching the students.
Right.
So we didn't, I think it's Einstein that says, you don't really know something unless you can explain it to a third grader. It was kind of one of those situations where we really wanted to get familiar before we started upping the production for Politatine. But now we're starting to get to that point where we're introducing a new cohort, and we have lectures that are ready, and we have all of these training sessions. So now they're going to up it to more of a high level production. But previously, it was that camera, these microphones, and that's all that they had, and they made it work. And when I was doing Politatine, it was just my iPhone. So definitely an upgrade for them. I wanted to talk to you about now going into the political side of things. Yes. The hands-off protest. Did you see anything about this protest yesterday?
No. Well, it was this weekend, right? On Saturday, there was all over the place. It was thousands of people showing up, which I think is exciting, getting people out there. I've always said it's got to start with the people, right? This is how we get people involved. This is how we get people to come out against these things, right? This is how we affect change, is by getting the people involved and having them kind of make the statement and having them kind of lead the way. Congress, as much as it is, right, it's Congress follows.
Yeah.
And, so we need the people to get out there, right? We need everybody, not just the Democrats, but the Republicans, to kind of see, I'm talking about the Republicans in Congress, to see what is going on out there. And people are not excited about what they're seeing from the Trump administration right now and how it's negatively impacting them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think Republicans are scared? Like, genuinely, I don't know if you're not huge on social media, I imagine, but there's all these talks about paid protesters.
I'll just use Ted Cruz right now.
Sure.
Right? He has come out. He has spoken out against these tariffs. He has broken away from the administration. He's been a staunch supporter ever since he lost in the first time he ran against Donald Trump in 2016. He's coming out against this. So I will use that as my kind of the meter right there, right? If he's coming out speaking against the president, I think, yes, I think they're definitely worried about what is going on right now, and they're worried about what they're seeing with the stock market. They're worrying about how, this is basically self-inflicted.
Yeah.
The economy was in good shape. Inflation was coming down and had been coming down since the end of the Biden administration. But now they're worried. It is, right? And it is an actual worry that inflation is going to start growing up. They say the NASDAQ is now in a bear market. How long is that going to take before it happens on the New York Stock Exchange as well, right? The Dow Jones. It is not looking good.
Yeah, no. And I think it's obviously Ted Cruz breaking away is a good sign. I saw a clip the other day of a Republican. They asked him, I think he was in the Rayburn building, or it might have been a senator that they asked him, are you worried about the stock market? He just turns and looks at the camera and goes, yep. And that was it. That's all he said. Yeah. And he kept walking.
Well, I think there's legislation trying to be moved right now in the Senate. And I think, Don Bacon on the Republican side is introducing a similar piece to kind of have Congress get control of these tariffs again.
Yeah.
With the president, like many things he's doing right now, he is finding some reason where he could make an excuse or do something to say, like, well, this is an emergency. I need presidential powers in order to kind of do this. And this is what he's done with the tariffs, right? He's declared a national economic emergency and put these tariffs in place. But what was the emergency that he was trying to fix, or where was the problem?
Yeah.
There wasn't one. And he just does not understand, I think. Like Donald Trump is not somebody who's been involved in the stock market. He's not somebody who's done that. He does not understand that part of economics. He is a real estate guy. His money has always been in real estate.
Yeah.
That is what he's known. You can go back, and they've been showing clips all over the news, all over this weekend, right, about him going back to the 80s, talking about how tariffs are going to ruin the American economy, and Japan, how they're treating us unfairly. And this is going back to the 80s. But if you look at our economy now compared to the Japanese economy, our economy is much stronger than theirs.
Yeah, yeah.
Much stronger than theirs.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And he's been wrong. He has been wrong about tariffs since the 80s. He hasn't changed his philosophy at all. He continues to be wrong about them now. They are not, the way they are trying to do this, is not going to fix our system. And they are trying to do this to eliminate the trade deficits, which are not really deficits. Because we are spending more money buying goods from Indonesia or Vietnam or any other, Thailand or any of these countries, does not mean that we are actually losing money to these countries.
Yeah.
Vietnam is a poor country. They're never, ever going to spend as much as we do on American goods as we do on goods coming out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
And for him to try and work, and that's really what this is, to try and eliminate these trade deficits, but it's just not going to happen. It is not there. And the economists are coming out and speaking against it and what they're trying to do, and it is not working. Well, I should say what he is trying to do is not going to work.
Yeah, yeah. I saw an interesting analysis from a British columnist the other day talking about kind of these tariffs and where these ideas come from for Donald Trump. And basically what she was saying was Donald Trump is stuck in the 60s.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is stuck in this era where America was the one manufacturing things, where those jobs were here in the United States. And unfortunately, or fortunately, if you look at the way that the American economy has grown in comparison to other OECD nations, or that is like the wealthiest nations in the world, how we've compared over the past several decades is we've skyrocketed. Our economy has almost doubled since that period, where other countries haven't been able to keep up. And so basically what she was saying is just, he hasn't evolved. And you mentioned, Donald Trump is a real estate guy. I would argue that that's even giving him a lot of credit. When you go bankrupt 6 times,
well,
I wouldn't consider you a real
really,
estate
if
guy.
you can go back and you can look at many of things, right, that he's ruined. one of the big ones that sticks in my mind, right, is the USFL.
Yeah.
You know, the USFL was a football league that came out in the 80s. They played football during the summer. It was kind of a league meant that it was created, kind of like I think the UFL now, right?
Yeah.
Which is a summer football league. To kind of give football fans some football to watch during the off season of the NFL,
where they would like kick instead of kicking off the ball, they would like drop it and they would like run.
Yeah,
for
that
it?
was kind of like the XFL did that, right? So the XFL basically evolved and combined with another league, which I don't remember what it was called, to now have the UFL. The USFL was a professional football league that was started in the 80s. Where a lot of like big time players, like guys who are now in the Hall of Fame and stuff, started out in the USFL before they kind of moved over. Like Steve Young being one of them, who was the quarterback for the 49ers. He started out with the LA Express coming out of college. But he ruined that league because he was the owner of the New Jersey Generals, and he was adamant about them moving the schedule to, compete with the NFL during the NFL season, moving it to the winter, like, when you regularly expect football to be played. And they ended up going to court and they won the case, but they only got their settlement was only for like $1 or something. And so, but basically the league ruined it because he kept pushing it in this direction to go and compete with the NFL. And it was never, ever going to be that, right? It was meant to just give fans something to watch during the off season of football. Kind of like, again, what the UFL is doing right now. The UFL right now, the current football league that plays it, and their season's going on right now, is never going to match the NFL for size or money or anything, right? It is just kind of meant to give people something to kind of do and to kind of watch, during the off season.
Yeah, they're filling in their market, right? They know that there's people that still want to continue to watch football when college isn't being played and when pro football isn't being played. So they offer something.
But that's one thing, right? He ruined. He wanted to build Atlantic City into the East Coast Las Vegas. That failed. He bought the Plaza Hotel and basically ran that into bankruptcy.
I think it's
just so many different things that he has kind of failed at. And the only thing he's really ever been able to kind of sell and been good at is really his name. And his image. Right. And the Apprentice, the TV show, which I admit I used to watch. I don't even remember what day of the week it came on, but we used to watch The Apprentice when it came on, and it was fun entertainment to kind of do. But somehow that became the show too, right? Where somehow it helped his image to kind of give him this better thing about how successful of a businessman he really was, and he was never as successful as he made himself out to be.
No, I think what was going back to the Atlantic City thing, I think I will give Donald Trump credit. It is impressive to open a casino and go bankrupt. Like that is one of those things where it's like, how? The rule is the house always wins.
That is not the goal, right? That is not the goal.
Yeah, it was very interesting. But going off of this reality TV role that Donald Trump played, now that we're discussing the evolution of Trump, do you think that his experience in reality TV and this transitioning of the media, all of these things coming together where people are kind of expecting almost entertainment from their politicians, do you think that gave him an advantage that maybe other politicians can't have because they just don't have that experience?
I think it has, in the sense that for him, everything is about entertainment, right? Even when he did the Zelensky thing and they were going after him, his statement was after that was done was like, oh, that's good TV.
Yeah.
Right?
It's gonna be good for the ratings.
And it kind of has, look, he knows how to play the media. He knows how to talk to the television. He knows how to talk to people, through the camera. And he's done very well at it. And so I think that definitely gave him a leg up on his competition when he was running for president the second time. It definitely helped him. The 4 years he was out of office, he focused on that and kind of used the camera and the media and everything to kind of continue to keep him in the news when people thought he was going to go away. But, he knows how to manipulate. He knows how to use the camera. He knows how to use the entertainment value of television to help promote himself even when it's he has nothing to promote and it's all negative.
Yeah. No, and I think that, I feel like what concerns me about it is the way that he's able to take any scenario and almost make it good, because it's kind of this rule, any publicity is good publicity, even bad publicity.
Right.
And it concerns me more so for the impact that it has on my fellow citizen. Again, going back to the social media thing and this hands-off protest, a lot of these conservative, you used to say these conservative outlets, right? Now it's these conservative profiles on social media. They're pushing this idea that these protesters were paid. All of these people were bussed in because, you have to take a bus from the parking lot here in D.C. to be able to get into D.C. Like, you can't just park wherever you want. And same thing in Los Angeles or in any major city that, if you're planning on bringing in a lot of people, you have to obviously get the people from somewhere that you can't just park on the side of the street. But they're saying that all of these people are bussed in. And they're saying that Donald Trump, trust in Trump is now instead of MAGA, now they have trust in Trump.
Right.
Which maybe isn't as good as MAGA, that abbreviation right there. But what do you think the response has to be from our side, right? Obviously a lot of Americans are concerned and a lot of the country is divided right now. And I think it's easy to look at people that like Trump and like the things that he's doing and excuse him, despite the fact that their 401k turned into a 201k. Do we push those people away, or do we try to pull them in? What's the approach here? How do we do that if we want to?
Look, I think we just got to stick with the truth and reality, right? People are seeing how this is affecting them, and you are hearing stories in the media too about how people would put their faith in Trump, and they feel like he's already kind of turned his back on them. I've heard from union leaders, right, that are mad. Well, they're angry, right? They're angry because of what they're seeing, but they're hearing from their members, and a lot of, some of the union members have been kind of going in that direction and supporting what I would say kind of voting against their own interests, but have kind of, for whatever reason, gravitated towards Donald Trump. But now they kind of feel betrayed, right? Because they're, like I said this on CNN when I was on there this weekend, right? People right now are getting the double whammy. Not only is inflation going to go up and they're going to pay, they have to start paying higher for things at the grocery stores and for clothes and for shoes and for everything, but they're also getting hit right now with their 401k or their pension plan. That is getting hit right now. That's the double whammy, right? Not only are they going to have to pay more, but they're losing more in their, especially the recent retirees. Yeah. That are going in there, right? They're losing money.
Yeah. No, and
it's affecting them.
It's devastating.
But we have to, I would say, look, what happened this weekend with the protests was great. People getting out there, that needs to continue. The people need to continue to get involved. That is how we are going to affect change. That is how we are going to create change, by getting people involved, keeping them engaged, to get them out. This is what's going to bring them out to vote in the midterm elections in 2026. That's what did it in 2018. We need to keep going and fighting in order to make that happen. And I think if we keep doing that as well, right, Republicans are going to see that, it is going to, roll over into, farmers are going to continue to speak out, because now they don't have people to sell their, the USAID contracts have hurt farmers already, right? Now you're putting tariffs on goods that they sell to countries as well, too. We make so much, this is like a known fact, right? We make more food here in the United States than what we can consume, that we do actually send that out in goods to overseas that other countries buy. But now if you're raising the price on them, they're going to go other places. Yeah. South Korea, Japan, and China, who three nations that are coming together, and these are three nations that have a long history of conflict.
Not just conflict, like gross, like raping and pillaging and going in. And
they do not, even in our post-World War II world, they do not get, they get along, but they don't really get along. And there's always been kind of contention there between these nations. They're coming together to kind of go and to fight the American tariffs, right? I mean, look, he's bringing
enemies together.
Bringing enemies together, and it is not. I mean, it is not good.
Yeah. Well,
it's not good, and we need to keep. The people need to keep raising their voices. They need to keep doing this. They need to keep speaking up, and look, he's always going to have his followers. He's going to have his hardcore MAGA people who are going to believe him and do whatever he says. We're going to follow him to the end. But I think there's those independents. There are other people out there that will kind of gravitate towards what is right, because in the end, people are always going to vote their pocketbook.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because it almost seems like Donald Trump, in a way, he is healing the world, maybe inadvertently, right? He's mending some broken relationships.
He's gonna, and this is his manipulation of the media market. At some point, he's going to claim that, look, I was able to do what nobody else can, and bring them together to have a tighter trade. Amongst these countries and nations, right? Where now they're working together.
Yeah.
And he'll take credit for that. That they are. He'll take credit for that happening off of our devastation that's happening in our country.
Yeah. And going back to that article from the British columnist, one thing that she mentions as a part of Donald Trump being in this kind of 1960s mentality is he still thinks that Russia is a serious player. And I don't mean to diminish Russia's nuclear capacity or, their history, their long history, but I mean a serious economic player. No. They're not the superpower that the USSR once was. No. You can't get things from negotiating with them. They're not a grand player on this stage like they once were. And do you think that Donald Trump? I want to get a little bit more into the psyche of like these tariffs, because anyone that's taken Katz the other day on the last episode, he said anyone that's taken a freshman economics class knows that these tariffs are not good.
Right.
I haven't taken a freshman economics class here in college, but I did take social studies in 6th grade where we learned about tariffs, and I took that class and I learned that tariffs can hurt. They're a tax on consumers. We know that.
Right.
And they're bad for the economy. You don't have to take a freshman year economics class. You can open the stock market app on your phone right now and look at what tariffs are doing to your 401k. Do you think there's a larger game here?
I don't know. And that's the thing, right, is trying to figure out like what he's thinking. And the two things that I see that he's trying to achieve from these tariffs, right, are he's trying to zero out the trade deficits, right? But again, trade deficits are not real deficits. It doesn't mean we're losing money to like Vietnam and Sri Lanka.
But negative means bad, right? That's their whole thing.
But it just, the American, we came out of the pandemic a lot stronger than any other country in the world. The dollar is strong. We are buying goods that are produced in other countries. I mean, the Nikes that you make, right, are made in Vietnam. Yeah. We have the purchasing power here in the United States to go and to buy those shoes, no matter where they come from or whatever, and to have them and buy them. I don't know what the average salary is in Vietnam, but I'm going to probably say it's probably not a lot. They are not going to be buying goods from us, right? They're at the capacity that we are able to. They don't have the strong economy that we do to where they can go and they're going to be able to buy as much as we buy from them.
Yeah.
And that is what he doesn't understand, right? And that's not going to work. And the other thing is about moving manufacturing back to the United States, that he thinks the tariffs are going to force these companies to start moving manufacturing back to the U.S. And again, we want that. I do want that. But tariffs are not the way that's going to happen. What we're doing with the CHIPS Act right now is probably the best example of what we need to do, right? It is legislation through Congress that Congress passed that is making investments in the manufacturing platforms to create the manufacturing, the capabilities and the capabilities to do that and to move it here back to the United States. Yeah. That is what needs to be done. Is the investment in this, right? Building the infrastructure in order to make that happen. And again, that's going to take time. But he talks about like it's going to happen in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
And he's like, he'll say, and he's like, oh, it's already changing. Our economy's becoming stronger already.
Yeah.
Just after like 3 days. Which you can see it's not. You can see it's not, but that is his manipulation, and that is his play on words that he's doing to try and convince people that, oh, no, because there are people who are just going to believe what he says.
Yeah.
But it's not. If we're going to bring manufacturing back to the United States, it's got to be through investment in infrastructure for that manufacturing and working with companies to bring that over here, right? It is not going to happen in a matter of days or weeks or even months or even like a couple years. And definitely tariffs are not going to move manufacturing. Where BMW or Volkswagen is not going to start building cars here in the United States because of these tariffs.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing, too, that a lot of people don't understand is just how interconnected our global economy is at this point.
It is.
Like, pineapple doesn't grow in the United States year-round. We're able to access different fruits, different vegetables, because we're able to tap into different geographical locations that can give us these fruits and vegetables.
People used to can tomatoes, right? Because you could not get tomatoes only grew, like you said, in the United States only certain times of the year. So people would can them so that they would have tomatoes or be able to make tomato sauce throughout the entire year.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that anymore.
No.
We have access to fruits and vegetables from all over the world that we can get, and we can get them here in a matter of hours and days, right? So that it's fresh. I mean, go to the grocery store and look right now where during the winter where your fruits and vegetables are coming from.
Yeah. Well, maybe not right now anymore, but before Liberation Day, maybe you could have looked.
Right.
No, it's going to be damning for a lot of Americans. I think a lot of people are going to get hurt as a consequence, and this is something obviously that is going to definitely devastate the United States economy. We're seeing multiple, predictors, economists come out. To be completely fair, though, we saw multiple economists come out before Donald Trump was elected, before the election even happened, saying that Donald Trump's plan was going to be detrimental to the United States economy. But like the experts on vaccines, like the experts on the economy, we don't like to listen to experts, apparently, people that dedicate their entire lives to studying these things.
Well, look, I think it came down to just very simple, right? He said he was going to reduce prices, which he hasn't done. And he said he was going to, make the economy better. He was going to lower inflation, put more money in people's pockets.
Yeah.
And that's what people heard.
Yeah.
And that's why they went to him, right?
Yeah.
Look, I don't even really understand the ins and outs of like hardcore macroeconomics and things like that are going on. And I think it's, very few people really do. I mean, there are people who study these things their whole lives in order to kind of do that, right? To become experts at this. And by no means would I ever say like I'm, an economic expert, but, but again, right, when you kind of break it down into simple things, like you said, right, like how do you explain it to a third grader? When you tell people like, hey, we're going to lower inflation, we're going to put more money in your pocket, and we're going to fix the economy, that's what they hear. Yeah. That's what they heard, and that's what they gravitated towards. And they weren't really listening to the details. Yeah. And right now we're with him and smack dab in the details, and so far it's not working, right? And nobody sees a way out of this to where anything, if we keep going down this path, where somehow it's going to get better.
Time for a quick message from our sponsors.
This episode of Who Dem is brought to you by Elect Dems Now. We all know that podcasts are the future. They give us the chance to connect with our elected officials like never before. That's why Elect Dems Now is committed to helping voters engage with the people who represent us. Supporting organizations that bring us closer to our representatives is crucial to advancing and advocating for the change we want to see. Whether it's $5 or $50, every donation to Elect Dems Now helps shape our future and ensures a country we can all be proud of. Your support sends a clear message to candidates and elected officials. Connecting with you means connecting with America. To contribute and make a difference, visit electdemsnow.org today. Your donation helps build a world where we are all connected. Paid for by Elect Dems Now, electdemsnow.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I the other day I was, we're preparing for classes to register for classes here at GW. And Elizabeth Vaquera, she asked me, if I was ready if I had a plan for next semester. And I told her I had concepts of a plan like Donald Trump told us with healthcare. And she said that wasn't enough. But apparently it's enough for him when he has concepts of a plan. And we're seeing the consequences of only having those concepts, like you're saying. You can say, I'm gonna get good grades next semester. But if I don't have a plan for it, we don't know if that's actually gonna take place. And that's what we're seeing with Trump.
Have you ever seen the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
If you ask me about most movies, my answer would be no. I'm not a big movie person, but tell me about it.
So it's a great movie. Like in the 80s, Matthew Broderick plays this kid who's basically ditching high school for the day and kind of goes out through Chicago and the town. But there's a scene in the movie, Ben Stein, and I think most people, if they saw Ben Stein, they would know who he is. But Ben Stein is actually, he kind of did movies and a little acting, but he's actually an economist in real life. And he used to actually have a show with Jimmy Kimmel called, Get Ben Stein's Money or Win Ben Stein's Money or something like that. It was a game show where you would compete against him. But there's a part in the movie where he's like boring his class to death talking about tariffs during World War II. And I think it was like the Hawley Smoots tariffs during World War II that Hoover instituted, trying to make the economy better for the United States. But all it did was, again, create more, we put tariffs on countries and these countries put tariffs on us. And it actually put us deeper into the Great Depression and actually made it worse than better.
Yeah.
But he actually came out with a new video kind of emulating the, as my kids would say, it's like a meme or whatever.
I think I have seen now what you're talking about.
It's like a new video where he's kind of replaying the talking about tariffs and how bad they are, right? Kind of doing it now. And it was funny to kind of see that, right? But it is, again, right? That is a way that we need to kind of go, and we need to kind of like, use these things to kind of help people understand that, these are not good.
Yeah.
That's how kind of we communicate and educate right now, or as my kids say, through memes and little videos and stuff that they watch on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these are the things that we kind of have to go out and get there and create to kind of help people understand that this is not working and it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, on an earlier episode, you guys were talking about this right-wing infrastructure, the online digital infrastructure that the Daily Wire and Turning Point USA have been able to build. And that's actually, you were asking me why I got away from the microphone and started being on the production side of things. It's because, I want to be able to kind of combat that. I want to set up an infrastructure of our own. Because when I was a kid, growing up, I was a big Call of Duty fan. I've been playing since I was 6. And YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
6?
I was a young kid.
My kids keep asking me if they could play. I keep telling them no.
Yeah, no, and that's good. That's good. You should be telling them no.
I got my hands on it a little early. If they heard this right now that you were playing Call of Duty at 6 years old, they would be staring me down right now. Why can't we?
It was an older cousin's influence, so definitely my parents weren't too happy about it, but they saw that I enjoyed it, so they let me take a shot at it, literally. And so, I would watch YouTube videos as well, growing up. And it was really interesting because about 10 years ago, YouTube had this phenomenon going on online where, you were watching people play Call of Duty, and a lot of these people playing Call of Duty had more conservative opinions, and they would come out every once in a while in the video. And what would happen is it would start suggesting Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and other people with conservative opinions. So you have, and you're seeing the consequences of it now. Yeah. I don't remember the name of the show. Maybe, Max, you would know it off the top of your head. Your dad brought it up. The show about the manosphere. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the manosphere. No. But it's this online, it's basically an online community of men that use like pseudoscience and neoliberal like economics to justify like patriarchy. And to say, women need to be subservient to men and all of these things. And there was recently, Adolescence. I don't know if you've heard about this.
That's I haven't seen it yet, but that's the new show. I guess one of these new shows that's streaming right now.
Yes, yeah. And the UK actually just mandated that all middle schoolers have to watch the show.
Really?
Because it is teaching them about this manosphere. And this manosphere originated, it didn't originate necessarily with the Call of Duty videos that I'm telling you about, but what it caused was it caused a lot of young men to start going into this reactionary pipeline. And we saw the consequences of that obviously in the last election, but we're seeing the consequences of it, I think, even in the conversation that me and you are having today with the way that, like, since they're in this circle already and they're already inside of this echo chamber, it's hard to kind of penetrate it and to get in these ideas of, like, you know, tariffs are bad when everyone inside of that circle is saying tariffs are good. So I agree with you. I think that we need to continue to try to, you know, push the online digital infrastructure, because that's the way, you know, regardless, you know, we can walk to the metro right now and there's homeless people that have phones. You know, there's people in multi-million-dollar penthouses that have phones. These are, you know, this is the way that people are learning. And I think the right figured it out with the way that they did online, you know, their infrastructure. But I definitely think that the left needs to catch up, and they are making ground.
Well, I think so, right? And that's something that I will say we're pushing right now in the caucus, is to get more people on podcasts, to get more people out there and get there on this new media. You know, we've had people kind of come out and talk to us about it and really the advantage of it, and really what it could be and how it really opens us up to a new audience, right? That we haven't, you know, we haven't cracked yet. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons we're doing this show now. Yeah. But it is to kind of really get out there and to let people know, right, that we're out there. But I will tell you this is kind of funny. One thing I noticed the other day, and I don't really look at, like, conservative stuff or here and there, right, when I'm kind of like searching, like, whether I'm on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, but I did actually notice some of the things that I'm getting that are kind of popping up in my little kind of, like,
your For You page,
your suggestions, right? Tend to be a little bit more conservative. So I do kind of worry about the actual manipulation out there, right? Because we know now Zuckerberg and Meta is kind of on the side of Trump and things. And so are they kind of just pushing it out there more, right? Making it more available and kind of holding back some of the more stuff, what we'll call, like, you know, the moderate or even to the left. Kind of.
It's super interesting. And I don't know if you heard, but Bezos is trying to buy TikTok.
Yes.
That's been his new thing. And so now you're going to have Bezos owning TikTok, Elon Musk owning Twitter, and Mark Zuckerberg owning Meta. And, you know, going back to this conversation of, like, the media expanding and podcasts kind of changing.
It's really kind of like like, if he takes over TikTok, right, what does that become? Now it's like Amazon feeds are going to be all in your,
exactly
in your TikTok all the time. And it's really kind of this manipulation of really kind of involving media and retail and kind of trying to merge them together. It's like, okay, how do I use, like, this new media to kind of really push my brand, which, I mean, a lot of companies are doing right now too, right? But when you control the media, it's, you know, now you're, like, really kind of, how much Amazon stuff is going to be in your feed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because obviously the audience doesn't know this, but I study sociology, and I'm really interested in the sociology of the new media and podcasts and social media, TikTok, Instagram, all of these things. And there's a professor here actually at the university. I haven't taken his class, to be credit, for, you know, to my credit or to his credit, but I have heard about kind of what he teaches inside of this class. And one of the things that he talks about is how, you know, in the 70s, in the 80s, anyone could have a radio broadcast.
Right.
And eventually corporations started to get in there, and the you know, the floor to enter was a little bit higher. And he, you know, his uncle focused on legacy media. He wrote books about how the legacy media consolidated, kind of a similar thing to what you're mentioning right now, how they consolidated and how they use the news or you know, different channels to kind of advertise their other things that they're doing. You know, now you see, if you watch CNN, they're going to advertise HBO Max live because now they're one company together.
Right.
And so what he theorizes, speculates, then this was a couple years ago, so it's crazy to see it happening now, but that the same thing's going to happen with social media. where right now the floor to enter, anyone can have a TikTok page, anyone can have an Instagram page, anyone can have a podcast. It's a little bit different now. Like as we were talking about, there is a higher bar now. If you want to have a successful podcast, you have to invest a lot more capital into it. Whereas before you could just literally speak into your iPhone and upload a video. But he does theorize that the platforms in and of themselves, but also the programs on the platforms are going to become more corporatized and regulated. And I that is something that does concern me, being on this side of it, and seeing how that, when it wasn't that way, the impact that it already had on not only the election, but young men and their day-to-day lives. That's really what concerns me, how they interact with the people around them, and the women in their lives that love them. We've already seen that it has a negative impact. So it does kind of scare me, thinking about, how much worse it could get if a Bezos figure is the one to purchase TikTok. Has there been conversations about this TikTok purchase, about this ban in the caucus, or?
I haven't heard anything about it right now. The thing is, the thing I want to go back and look and ask them, that I wasn't in Congress when they passed that law that they had to sell it, but the president keeps delaying, and I want to go back and ask, does he actually have the authority to do that?
Yeah.
Because I thought they had to sell it or shut it down within a certain period of time, and that was it. And he's already extended it twice, so. Yeah. I actually want to go back and ask some of the people, hey, what did you guys actually pass?
I think the way that it works, and I could be, Max, I don't know if you want to search this as I say it, but it's the FCC that would actually implement the fines onto, I think it's $1,000 per person active on the app after the ban takes effect, is what the FCC will be charging TikTok. And so what Trump is doing, since the FCC is part of the executive branch, he's just saying that the FCC won't implement the fines. Yeah. He's promising TikTok, hey, you know what, we won't implement it for another 25 days. Yeah. So I think technically he's kosher there, but again, going back to what you were saying, it seems like he's trying to stretch his power a little bit.
Yeah. So, and there's definitely some questions that need to be asked about this, right? And why hasn't it been shut down? Yeah. I know TikTok's playing hard. I keep seeing commercials. I'm sure you've seen them too, about how great TikTok is and how it helps businesses. And businesses have been able to grow because of TikTok. And this.
Do you think it should be taken down?
I think there was a concern about the ownership, that it's actually owned by a Chinese company, and we know the Chinese government has influence within a lot of Chinese governments, and they could actually be using the data and everything that they are collecting to manipulate it and kind of use it for their own benefit against the United States. So I mean, that was a concern, right? And it was a bipartisan committee, both Democrats and Republicans, that got behind that idea. So obviously, again, I wasn't there at the time when they were doing it. So I wasn't involved in the decisions or anything as to what they saw or what actually materials or data that they were seeing at the time when they decided to pass that law, but it had bipartisan support. And so, I mean, obviously, I don't think they would have done it if there wasn't an actual truthful concern. Sure. For that happening. Yeah. So, I think there were legitimate reasons for that, right? Trying to push it and trying to get them to sell it so that it would be done, hopefully get it out of Chinese hands where the data could be used basically against the United States.
Yeah. I'm not too well informed on the situation as well, but from my understanding, the data that, well, first of all, obviously TikTok and China having access to American data is terrible, shouldn't happen, but they do get it in other ways, regardless, which is unfortunate, something that we do need to be concerned about. Yeah. But I thought the data that was coming from TikTok was being stored actually in a data center in Texas. Oracle actually has all of the data that TikTok users use here in the United States.
Again, I'm not privy to all the details and all the information that they had at the time when they were looking into this and creating it. But again, there must have been some real concerns. Yeah. About that, right? I think there were concerns. I would tell you the last time I was in Congress, right? There were concerns about security companies that were owned by Chinese companies that were here and operating in the United States, as far as cameras and stuff that they were installing, and really with the Would these Chinese companies and the Chinese government have access into looking at, getting the feeds and looking at the cameras and seeing what's going on and different things, right? So, I mean, there's definitely, I think, again, right, they wouldn't have done this unless there was really, truly legitimate concerns that they had. Now, I guess we'll see, right? I know that we could not, the federal government could not use TikTok. When I was at Department of Defense, that was actually one thing that I will say that recruiting-wise, that the recruiters wanted to be able to use, was to go on to TikTok to kind of get out there because it was the biggest platform, or is the biggest platform that people use. And they couldn't do it because there was a government ban on it.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't use TikTok at all. And still no government office or anything can use on their official side, use TikTok.
Until Mike Walls adds a journalist to a group chat using TikTok or something. Shares war plans
we'll
on TikTok. Going back to this conversation about China, I have just one question that's a little bit, I think, deeper. It's the other day, a foreign minister for China came out and he said, the markets have spoken. And that was in reference to what had happened with the tariffs and the trade, the trade situation internationally. And since World War II, the United States has maintained what I would say is global hegemony, right? They have been able to, as many people died in the war in Iraq per capita in Denmark as they did here in the United States. That didn't happen just because, Denmark really, loves the United States. It happens because we've been able to, influence other nations and support them and grow them economically. And they've returned that favor through combat or through trade deals like with Mexico and Canada. And it almost seems like what this Chinese foreign minister is implying is that kind of age of U.S. global hegemony has a shadow on it right now. If not, what he's suggesting is that it might be over. And that's something that does concern me. Growing up, my dad talked about the United States being the global superpower. And he would say, it's good that we might not do it perfectly every time. And we might, bureaucratically, it might be, a little bit messed up here or there. We might make, errors in our calculations in terms of international diplomacy. But at the end of the day, it's good that the United States is the party that's doing it because we wouldn't want to have someone like China or Russia doing it. Is that something that concerns you? Is that a genuine concern?
I think, that comment, right? I think it's just plain and simple, right? When he says, the markets have spoken, is that your tariffs are not working, right? This is not a plan that is going to be good for not only the U.S. economy or the world economy. And really, it is really affecting, right? I think we are the superpower out there, right? We are the ones that kind of, during the Cold War, that came out of it ahead of, the Soviet Union, that just did not have the economic might to kind of compete with us, and still, as Russia still really doesn't. But China has kind of, grown and kind of there, and they've kind of really put a lot of emphasis on their economy and have kind of done things to kind of really grow it and improve it. But I think when he says that it's like, the economy has spoken, right, is that our economy is so influential throughout the world, right, that decisions that we make, again, right, it's not just affecting our economy, it's affecting stock markets and everything all around the globe. It is having an effect on the world.
Yeah.
And right now, we live in a global economy. You can get around the world in less than 24 hours. It's not taking us, 6 months to sail from Europe to North America anymore.
Yeah.
You can do things in hours. You can pick up the phone and talk to somebody
across the world.
Across the world, like in current now time. We're not waiting on letters to come, via the sea anymore. Yeah. And so this world that we live in, right, is just close knit and it's tied, and our economies are tied together. And this is, one of the things that I'm reading a book right now talking about the U.S. and in China relations. But really, and really the thing that I have is our two markets, our two economies rely on each other. We are so intertwined that if one goes down, the other one is going to go down. And so, but, you know, at the same time, China is becoming our pacing threat, right? As far as like militarily, right? And some people say that we will be at war with China before 2035 in some aspect. But I'm like, are we really willing to risk, you know, our economy, you know, looking at both the United States and the Chinese kind of thinking the same thing? Are we really, you know, to pay that price for what, right? To ruin, because the ruin, if we go to war with each other, it's going to ruin both of our economies. It's going to, we're both going to take a hit, and it's, nothing's going to come of good from it. And so it is kind of an interesting book that I'm reading. It's a little bit of an older book, but I still think it kind of has an impact today and kind of plays, and it's talking about other like times in history where this has come about, like, you know, it references, right, you know, Athens and Sparta, it references, you know, Great Britain and Germany, you know, pre-World War I, and really kind of what led up to that kind of conflict there. And it's kind of trying to make the argument that we're in kind of that situation right now, that to where we're competing against each other, but it doesn't mean that we actually have to go to war. There can be a chance, and there is a way to get out of that. Right? And so we need to kind of find our way out of this, and really kind of, I think, working together globally and economically is going to be that way, because we rely on each other. Our economies rely on each other, and what we do, as we're seeing right now, right? And he's right about that, right? It's like the economy has spoken, and what we are doing is not only affecting here the United States, but it's affecting the world.
Conflict definitely isn't good. I think there definitely needs to be some collaboration. I remember, you know, going back to one of these classes that I have taken. It's called the Thucydides trap. Basically, this idea that once one nation starts to feel that another nation is competing with them, right? This zero-sum game. The United States controls 70% of the power. Russia has 30% of the power. Russia getting 40% of the power is a threat now. And basically, the idea here, I don't agree with I don't remember what scholar actually writes about the Thucydides trap, but I don't agree with it necessarily. But basically, this idea is that as one power feels their strength be threatened, they start to prepare for war, and they start to gear up for war. I agree with you that that's not the approach that we need to take. We need to take more collaboration. But going back to the question, do you think that this isolationist strategy from Donald Trump is the right way to go?
No, isolation for the United States in this modern times has never worked, right? Isolationism didn't keep us out of World War I. It didn't keep us out of World War II. I think the global approach that we took after World War II is trying to help keep the peace, and it's really kind of kept us out. I mean, we've had conflicts and stuff, but we haven't had a war like we've had, kind of going back to those where we're talking like World War, nations, you know, fighting against each other like in World War I and World War II. And the United States, I always say, and I will always argue, the world is a safer place when the United States leads. When we are impactful and we are making things and doing things around the world. And you know, they can argue like, oh, well, America first, right? But I think by acting globally, we are taking America first approach, right? We have the strongest economy in the world. We have been able to keep our nation safe and keep, you know, people out for the most part, right? And I'm not saying like things haven't happened. Obviously, we had like 9/11 and some other things that have happened here, but for the most part, we've been able to keep our country safe and at peace because we've taken a global approach, because we've been involved, because we've been, you know, pushers of democracy out around the world, right? Champions of democracy throughout the world. This has helped the United States. It's helped it economically. It's helped it, you know, keep safe. And isolationism has been something that has just never been good or helpful, and is you can go back and look, right? We learn from our history.
Yeah.
And we need to learn from that history, that when we have act like this, when we've kind of retreated, when we've become an isolationist nation where we don't get involved, it is worse, right? If we were to pull out of NATO and pull out of Europe, that does not make Europe safer, right? And by Europe and Russia becoming more at conflict, that does not make the United States safer.
Yeah.
We got pulled into 2 world wars in the 20th century. By Europe becoming less safe, it makes us less safe.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. Collaboration on the global stage is kind of what needs to happen, so that, very simply, so that we have access to tomatoes year round, but also so that our economy continues to thrive. But to push back on this point, or I wouldn't necessarily call it pushing back, but how do we, we talk about the economy being good. We talk about the economy being strong. Right now we're talking about the stock market plummeting and doing bad. But the reality is that 8% of Americans own 92% of the stocks.
Yeah.
And so my question is, how do we have that strength of the economy, to use one of Reagan's terms here, trickle down? How do we actually have the America? Is it through unions? Is it through empowering the worker? Or is it through tariffs? Is it through trying to bring back this infrastructure?
Well, it's not through tariffs. And really, I think, trickle down economics never really worked. When you can go back and you can look at when Reagan tried it that way, right? When he first came into office, and things did not go well.
Yeah.
And nobody likes hearing this, right? But the reality is, like, when he started working with Tip O'Neill, when they started raising taxes, like on those that should be paying more, not so much the worker, right? But those that can do it, and their corporations and stuff, was when the economy actually turned around for them. Right. So we need those businesses to pay more of a share. We need them to kind of be productive. There's really, look, I don't want to deny anybody their ability to go out and to earn and earn what they are able to do. But does Elon Musk really need $316 billion?
Yeah.
Could he pay a little bit more in taxes? Probably.
Yeah.
Would it hurt him economically? No, he'd still be the richest man in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think we need to make those people kind of come out and pay more.
Yeah.
And they're not going to suffer for it, right? They're not going to be, it's not like we're going to be taking food out of their mouth.
Yeah, precisely. Right? No, we have a book by Matthew Desmond right behind you, Poverty in America. And he writes, I actually can't remember the name of the other book right now, but he writes this book where he brings up this really interesting statistic. And I'm sure that you've heard it, but for every dollar that we pay in to social safety nets, Social Security in particular, we get $68 back. That's how the American economy continues to strengthen, right? For every, people talk about our education right now is in crisis. We have one of the worst education systems in the world. But then you look at, okay, what's the number one reason that students are failing tests? Would you happen to know what the number one reason that students are failing tests right now? It's because they're hungry.
Yeah. Oh,
it's because they're hungry.
Well, it's impactful.
It matters. Going and taking an exam and you haven't had breakfast or you haven't had lunch. Yeah. That impacts you.
You can't learn on an empty stomach.
You can't learn on an empty stomach. And instead of going and making sure that this children in the wealthiest country in the history of the world have food, we're talking about them getting jobs so that they can provide food for themselves. I'm all for meritocracy and I'm all for working for, getting what you deserve through work. But we also have to create that opportunity. And a hungry child isn't going to be able to compete with a child that had a full, breakfast, regardless of the race, religion, color, creed, or sexual orientation. That's just the simple truth. So I agree. It's not only that we're becoming isolationist on the global stage, we're almost becoming isolationist on a national stage and super individualistic. Now it's coming to the States. But, I think even with the measles outbreak, there's just so many things that we could point to right now and just, say that things just are wrong almost. And it feels like we're heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And going back to this hands-off protest, Max, can we pull up some of the signs from this protest as we wrap up here? one of the questions that we had very early on in the show was directed at Trump being a fascist and Trump being authoritarian. And at that point, you said that you weren't ready to call him that yet. And I don't know if you are. Yeah, I don't want to imply that. But definitely a lot more of America is getting there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen some of the signs yesterday, but a lot of these, there was some could we get actually Instagram up? Let's get I think Courier has a good post on this. I don't know if you've seen these signs. Some of these signs are very creative. One of them said, "Grab them by the testicles," which I think was very, maybe not Courier, Gomer Perfect Union. But a lot of Americans are starting to feel very concerned.
Yeah.
And I think rightfully so. I think when you're talking about invading other countries, I think when you're crashing the stock market, I think when you're, bolstering the rich people around you, when you're doing a Tesla cars show in front of the White House to try to sell more Teslas, when your national security advisor puts troops at risk and there's no accountability in the White House, when the economy is crashing and you're talking about, creating more jobs, when you're talking about protecting veterans, but you're firing 80,000 veterans from the VA. One thing that I think is super interesting, I didn't learn this until the other day, but 30% of federal workers are veterans.
Yeah.
1/3 of the people that Donald Trump has fired are veterans.
Right.
1/3. Yeah. He has fired more veterans than he has deported illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
That is absurd. Imagine, Obama came out the other day and he said, imagine if I did any of this. Imagine how many times Fox News would be running the headline.
Oh my God.
1/3.
It would be horrible. It would be, yeah. And the fact that they are ignoring this, right, just kind of proves that they are not, and I think they've even made that argument, right, that they are not a news outlet.
Yeah.
They're not about news. They're not about telling the story. They're not about doing what's, sharing what's right. They are all pretty much become the Donald Trump supporter network there. And there's others, unfortunately, there's others that are out there like there too, right?
Yeah.
But look, the protests were out there, the signs, and I think everything that's going on, we are not going in the right direction. I think when it comes to healthcare, you got now Robert Kennedy saying he's backtracking on some of the firings that we did.
20%.
Yeah, but we don't even know what he's going to do yet, right? As far as what he's bringing back, it is just and even the messaging and everything, right? The fact that he, who has been a vaccine denier, is sitting at the head, of Health and Human Services to kind of overseeing the healthcare in this nation. Is just, it's unbelievable.
I think as a general rule of thumb, if you have had a brain worm, you probably shouldn't be the director of Health and Human Services.
Yeah. And, and he made the argument that, I guess in his divorce case, that the brain worm damaged his brain and his thinking, his capacity to go out and to make money and to learn, right? Now, is that the truth? Or were you just doing that to try and get out of paying child support?
Yeah. My question is, did he make the argument or did he just open his mouth? Because it seems like there was just
obviously he's done some stupid things, from throwing the bear, like you said. He
probably where he got the brain worm.
The bear and out there in Central Park, and obviously his philosophy or thoughts on vaccines and everything, and his continuous denial of actually listening to research. And he always says, well, show me the research. And they keep showing him the research, but he just doesn't want to.
It's ridiculous. I don't know if you've heard now, and obviously I think there's 200 and some plus people now infected with measles, but something else is happening. They're getting vitamin A poisoning. Children are getting vitamin A poisoning because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that vitamin A is the cure to measles. So now you're having a measles outbreak and a vitamin A poisoning outbreak. And it's just like, someone said it simply the other day on social media. This is why we put experts in these positions.
Yes.
This is why we listen to the people that, again, going back to the conversation we were having earlier, dedicate their lives to studying this and understanding this.
Yeah. I mean, I oversaw, when I was Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel Readiness, right, I oversaw the Defense Health System, Defense Health Agency. I by no means was a medical expert or anything, and I learned a lot more about it than I ever thought I would, kind of just dealing with those issues. But, I mean, we had people in place, right? We had first it was Lieutenant General Lieutenant General. God, I can't remember his name now. But then Lieutenant General Crossland, who actually ran the Defense Health Agency, right?
Yeah.
They were the physicians in place to do that. They were the medical experts. We had medical experts. Our Assistant Secretary for Health Affairs was a former doctor. I mean, actually a current doctor, but he was a former general in the Army medical system. We had doctors in place. A lot of the experts and everything that were in place were medical experts there that we used. And I relied on them, on their knowledge and their expertise in order to help guide me. And whenever I needed to make a decision or kind of doing those things, I relied on that. And right now, we don't have people kind of doing that right now,
No.
right? They're using their own philosophy or mentality and not going by what the experts are actually saying in order to help them make decisions.
On the contrary, going back to this conversation about United States global hegemony, one thing that helped the United States post World War II was they got the scientists from Germany that that Germany didn't want because they were Jewish or for whatever other reason, and that came and Operation Paperclip that strengthened the United States. Right now, we're kind of seeing the opposite happen. I saw an article from Politico Europe the other day talking about the fact that now Europe is welcoming our scientists. And I mean, fair enough, right? You study your entire life, you go get a couple degrees, and you all of a sudden you figure out that you can't work, but another country wants to welcome you and they want your research. And that to me is scary.
Hopefully they're not going over to Russia or what part of who knows or Belarus or anywhere like that. But I can definitely see that on the medical side, the research, the biotechnology, right, where I think a lot of there's European companies right now that are kind of taking a lot of the leads and stuff like that as far as on some of the new drugs and things that are coming out are really the innovation, right? We think from stem cell research to cancer, and where they're trying to play a bigger role and get more involved. So why not come and get? I mean, look, we have the best colleges in the world. People from around the world want to go to our universities. I think education-wise, we still are leading the world there, right, as far as educating people at our colleges and universities. So why not? Would you want to come here and get those people and send them, take them there to and if I was a researcher and had that opportunity to kind of go and
of course,
where I could thrive and kind of do that and get that work and where it would be promoted and funding isn't being cut off here like it's being here in the United States.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I go there?
That's the thing, right? I was mentioning before we started filming, the contradictions, I think, is the number one thing that gets me from conservatives and particularly this administration. But we're complaining about H-1B recipients coming into the United States, getting an education or whatever, getting whatever qualification, or I guess it would be people that come in on an education visa, getting the education here in the United States and going back to their home countries, and we invest in them and then they return, which isn't the case, first of all. But second of all,
well, they're not coming here on free, right?
Exactly.
So if somebody from another country is coming here, they're not open to financial aid. Usually, I know universities and colleges like them because they're paying full tuition.
Yes, exactly. And the thing is now it's almost like, well, we're having people that do come here. Like now it is almost that case where we have people that were born here that are open to the tuition and financial aid, that study, that had research grants, that had all of these opportunities, and now they've had those doors closed to them. So what are they going to do? They're going to go to countries that they might have never even been before or considered living or working in, to be able to work, to be able to make a living. And it's very unfortunate. As we kind of wrap up the conversation here, I know that you had a hard deadline because of something going on in the White House, an event. Is that something you want to touch on?
Well, no. Today, I think I think people know, or people that know me know, I'm a big baseball fan. I'm a big Dodger fan, and the Dodgers have actually been invited to the White House today. So, I think members of Congress were who kind of represent the LA area were invited to go there today. So, I had the opportunity to go to the White House today just to kind of go and see what they're going to do. I don't know if I'm going to go yet.
Yeah.
I definitely want to go on to be supportive and cheer on the Dodgers as I'm a fan. I actually went to the game yesterday in Philadelphia. sat through it in the rain.
Yeah.
But I am. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the weather's like. The other thing here too is it's raining in D.C. right now, and do I want to walk take the 10-minute walk in the rain to get to the White House to do that thing is another thing.
Yeah. How does that change from administration to administration? Like, I guess there's no better word for it than like the vibes of the White House, right? Like, from Obama to Trump 1 to Biden to Trump 2. How do the vibes of like being invited or getting the opportunity to go change?
Look, I don't think I will probably be invited again unless I mean, the only reason we're being invited now, right, is I think because I'm a congressman who represents part of the Los Angeles area within Los Angeles County, and that's why. And the Dodgers have been invited. I don't think there's anything else right now. I can't see another reason why I would be invited again, unless there's another World Series championship next year.
Yeah.
But I don't think any other thing or anything that he may sign into law that this Republican Congress passes that, would I get invited to that? Who knows? But would I go? Probably not, because I probably voted against the bill anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, there are opportunities. Like when the PACT Act was signed, like I know I got invited to go as part of the administration. I was invited to go and watch the president sign the PACT Act. There were a lot of members of Congress there as well.
Did you get to go?
Yeah, I went to that. There was a couple of bill signings I went to when I was in the administration.
Yeah.
That I got invited to, and there was members of Congress there and stuff. And look, they may invite both sides because they want to show like, oh, we have bipartisan support on this, right? But I don't know right now. I just saying right now, I can't think of another situation where I would probably end up going back or where I would be invited back.
Gotcha. Yeah. I have one final question here because I don't know the next time that I'll get to fill in as host here. And it is something that I'm curious about. Going back to Jackie and her career as a broadcast journalist, is it true that she's won 2 Emmys?
Yeah, Jackie has 2 Emmys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
One for producing a story. God, I don't even remember what the story was. It was actually before I met her. But the other one is for... was for the newsroom, right? So she worked in the newsroom, and they got the best for that year. I guess they had the best newscast, and she worked on that newscast for the entire year, and so they got an award for that as well. So she has 2 Emmys that are sitting in our house. Right there on a mantle.
Wow. Yeah. Maybe we'll get an Emmy for this podcast. And
I don't know about that. Do they give Emmys for podcasts yet?
I don't know. So I'm sure soon they'll start giving them out. Maybe we'll get a Streamy.
You
That's kind of the award.
Is that what the award things are?
Yeah, they're called Streamies.
You never know, because I know when they started doing television shows for cable TV, right, the Emmys did not include them at the beginning, right? They had some other thing called the Ace Awards or something.
Yeah.
I'm kind of dating myself now, but... eventually, though, I guess they opened it up towards now. So you had all the Sopranos and all the other shows that were going on that were all kind of made through cable and everything.
I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they did have an Emmy for podcasting categories. But right now it's the Streamies. The Streamies are that's what they're called. They give them to YouTubers and Twitch live streamers and whatnot. That's very interesting because I had seen that on the website before that that she's I don't even remember which one. Maybe it was for the foundation that you guys have in California. That she's won 2 Emmys, and I was just so curious about that because that's pretty cool. Were you there for her receiving the second one, or did you?
The second one she didn't go to the award show.
Okay, it
was more of like was open up to the so because it was for the entire newscast, so everybody was able to get one. You had to pay for it, right? So they only actually give one, and if you wanted to get one, she had to buy it, which we did, of course.
Yeah.
But it was, it was great. She, it's like the little kind of the first one she actually did go up on stage over there, and I wasn't there because again I hadn't known her yet, we hadn't met. But I saw the pictures where she was actually at the award ceremony at there getting the award.
Yeah. What was your reaction to that when you first figured out that?
When I thought, wow, this is really cool. She actually won an Emmy award.
Yeah.
It was when I first kind of met her. I just thought that was one of the really cool things about her. I'm like, I don't think I know. I'd never met anybody who'd met an Emmy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I haven't either. I guess until Jackie, I hadn't met anyone that has won an Emmy either. Have you won any cool awards or any awards that you're like really, really proud to tout of? I don't know if anything's on par. Emmy's pretty high up there, so I don't know if anything matches that. But
we've gotten a lot of awards for our philanthropy work and things like that are proud of. But the one was my dad said like, oh, Gilbert was into the. I got into the Hispanic Hall of Fame, and I'm like, well, it wasn't the Hispanic Hall of Fame. It was the Hispanic Scholarship Fund Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Yeah, which we got an award there. But, on the shelf, right, that we have where Jackie has her 2 Emmys, in between them is I have a little trophy of mine that I got.
Nice.
Was I won a slot tournament on the when we went on a family cruise, I think like in 2009 or something.
Gotcha.
So that is my award that I have next to hers.
Yeah. Well, the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City would have hated to see you coming representing Cisneros. You would have emptied out. Maybe you were the reason that they went bankrupt back then.
No.
beating up the slots. That's awesome. That's cool. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it. Glad to have this opportunity to kind of be in front of the microphone and talk to you. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
No, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Yeah.
All right.
Likewise. All right. Awesome.